Okay, doing live coffee roasting today. My last live did not go good because I was trying something new, and that's kind of what I do, is try stuff new all the time. In fact, even today I'm trying something new. So now let me get this over here in the sun. This one's in the sun, a little bit better. Oops. This is what we're roasting. Got some Colombia. Going to get this in and going so I can get this roast going, and I'm going to tell you what's been going on because everything is so important. That's that, and then this is the other one we're doing. Let's see if I can get this up in here. Ethiopia. I just picked 2 bags. I didn't do anything to match any kind of flavors or scents or anything. I just got 2 bags and we're roasting it. So what it tastes like is what it's going to taste like. The switch fell on the ground. So this is my motor dial right here. I'm going to go ahead and start it. So that's going to turn it up, make it go faster. All right, let me light this thing. Let's get this going. Okay, so I don't know what happened on my last live. I think I was trying to do a live short or something like that. I'm not sure, but I remember it not working, having a lot of problems. And what was funny was I did 2 different batches that day. I did a nice espresso roast, really dark. And I did a good medium roast. So I did 2 roastings on my last video, and things did not work out as planned. So when I set this up, the sun was behind a tree. Now the sun is not behind a tree, so we have long shadows. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon here, and I'm a little late today because I did another live video on my other channel, and got a little late starting it and just kind of went, I didn't go long on it. I did my normal, but I did that earlier. I try to do these at 1 on Sunday, but I did not get there today. So this is my setup. This is my roaster, drum roaster, my burner. This is a high BTU burner. It's just a camp setup. But it is a little different because it's got the red knob on it, and I've talked about this every live because I want to make sure you guys understand, anybody new or anybody who's wanting to learn how to do this at home. That's why I do these lives. It's to show you basically live how it happens, what's going to happen, how it's going to work out. It's going to take about 15 or 20 minutes to get this thing going. So I have my propane tank, I have my burner. And like I said, it's a high BTU burner. It has a red knob, which generally indicates that you have a high BTU burner. A black knob on the gas burner generally represents a lower BTU. I'm not saying you can't use the lower BTU one. I'm just saying this is the higher BTU one, so I can get the flame going a little bit better. So my son took one of my propane tanks. I think he took the empty one. I'm not sure. This one feels pretty full. So I don't think I'm going to run out of propane today, because that would be bad, because you don't want to run out of propane. So some of the other things I have here, I have a colander. This is for the last process where we do the dechafing and the cooling. I have it sitting on top of a fan. This is just a cyclone fan, or whatever you call them. I got it on clearance at the end of the season a couple years ago, and it works really well because it blows straight up. I can set my basket on here. I can turn it this way. This is a good fan for doing this because it will blow up. Now I have 2 colanders because I do 2 pounds. I've learned that I can't just do 1 pound in one colander. I've got to split them up. So I've got these gloves here that I use for opening the drum and dumping the drum. I actually prefer to use these gloves because the drum is really hot. We're going to be roasting to temperatures over 400 degrees here. So everything's going to be really hot when we're done, and we need to start moving. Because the trick here is once everything's done roasting in the drum and we get to the temperature we want, we're going to talk about in a second, we want to cut the heat off and we want to get it dumped into our colander and started cooling right away, because it's going to continue to cook or roast, heat up, because it's hot and it was over a flame. So we want to pay attention to our temperatures. That's why I have my thermometer over there. My thermometer is indicating that we're at 217 degrees. Roasting a little bit hot today, it looks like, because like I said, we're trying to take about 15-20 minutes. Process is very slow to start, and that's kind of what we want. We want it a little slow. And in the drum here on the side over here, we have a see-through window on the side of the drum that we can see into the drum, so we can see what's happening. We can see what's going on with the color of the beans. And that's why I have that window down in the bottom left. So top right is temperature, bottom left is what the beans look like as they're roasting, and then everything else is just everything else, just the views. So let's talk about roasting. So this is by no means a process where you're going to be like a professional roaster and you're going to open your own coffee roasting business and stuff like that. This is like a startup type setup where you're going to be able to roast coffee at home, and you're going to be able to get basic roasts out of it. You can adjust some flavors and things like that based on temperature and the darkness, but there are other things that are involved with roasting coffee that the professional coffee places use to get the different flavors. And it's harder to do that with the drum type setup because there's a lot of things to do with air, temperatures. They use lots of temperature probes. They're roasting in much larger batches, and they change the temperatures and slow the roasting process down at different times to maintain different flavors and stuff like that, because everything about the flavor of the bean that the bean's going to put out when it's roasted has to do with time, temperature, air, all these different things. So our process here, what we're doing is basic roasting. We're doing something where we can do it at home, we can create our own flavors, and I use the sampler set from Sweet Maria's, and I've bought some online too, some green beans online, but I have a subscription to Sweet Maria's 8-pound sampler pack. It gets shipped to me every 2 months automatically. Paying attention to the temperature, 300, and I don't know why it's jumping around so much. I'm pretty sure I need to get a new temperature gauge because it shouldn't be jumping around numbers like that back and forth. But that's okay, because if your temperature gauge isn't working well, you can use the sight gauge on the side and you can look at the roast to see how it's doing. So I'm just going to kind of do my best here. I know for me, I've been doing this, long enough that I can know by sound and smell, and how the beans are reacting inside the drum to know where I'm at. Because what I'm listening for is the first crack. We're getting close to that area here. That temperature gauge is all over the place. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know, maybe it's touching. I know the wire's a little frayed. That's why I think I need a new temp sensor, because this this wire is going into the drum here. There's a hole in the side of the drum here. You can stick it into the drum and the beans are basically rotating on it. That seems like I might have, I think I stuck too much wire in there when I was setting things up. So it seems like the temperature might have mellowed out now, because I can tell by the color of the beans here that we are not 350 or 400 degrees. We are much lower than that. So we're gonna watch that. Anyways, back to my subscription. It comes every 2 months. It's a sampler pack, so I get all the varieties of different coffees. For me, I get it because it's the less expensive part of it. You know, I do a lot of roasting. I do this every 2 weeks. I used to do it every week, but now that I have this drum roaster, I'm able to do 2 pounds at a time. So I get more coffee, or more coffee beans, of course. So I know that once I roast it, I don't end up with a pound of coffee. I never actually weighed how much I end up with after the roast, but I get a pound of green beans. So once it's roasted, you know, you get a lot of the moisture and, you know, the water content and all that, you know, cooks out of it. That's part of what you hear in the cracking process and all that. So I would assume it's probably 3/4 of a pound, probably by the time it's done, something like that. I don't know. I don't really even care. I just do coffee roasting because I like the flavors that I get out of it. I know that if I want a nice medium, you know, roast and flavor, you know, I do a medium. I do about 430, 425 degrees roast. If I want a really dark espresso, but last week, or the last roast I did, which I apologize, I had issues on it, didn't get to see it, but I did a roast at 465 degrees was my final temperature. It was a beautiful dark roast, very oily bean, you know, oil coating on the bean, nice and shiny, and it actually is making some great espresso. Sorry, somebody's been trying to get a hold of me here. So the 465 temperature that I did was really, really good. And then my regular medium roast I did last time was 430 degrees. It was actually a really beautiful, great roast. What I've been doing is I've been doing one of my coffee cups in the morning with a shot of espresso. And that's usually the one that I take to work. The first cup of coffee in the morning is just a regular cup of coffee. I've found that if I do 2 shots in the morning, my stomach generally can't handle it. It's too much coffee, too much everything, and the espresso is kind of hard. Okay, so starting to get some cracking, which is one of the first signs that we're listening for. You can see we have some color change going on in the bean right here. We're at 373 degrees. So we're getting to the point now to where we really need to pay attention to what's going on. Once that temperature hits 400, 410, we want to be on top of it. We want to make sure that we're ready to get that burner off and get the drum off of the roaster and the beans into the colander to get cooling. Because once we get there, everything's going to go very, very fast, nice and quick. This drum roaster you can get on Amazon. You look up coffee roasters, a bunch are going to pop up. There's a bunch of sellers on this particular type right here. They're all pretty much the same. I don't think there's much difference in them. There's other types you can get too. There's smaller ones you can get that are less expensive, like a basket roaster. You can use that as well. It's what I started on, but I could only do a pound in it. And you know, I like roasting coffee, but doing it every week living in Western Washington is really tough because it rains a lot. I'd have to go in the garage and do it, or I'd have to set up my tent, you know, all sorts of different things. So I like doing the 2 pounds a week. So you're gonna see we got some smoke starting to come out here. You know, that's just the beans, you know, releasing their moisture. So you've got some smoke content because of the heat and the cooking, and then you also have some water vapor content, steam that's starting to release because the bean is starting to expand. And that's what the cracking is. The cracking is like a popcorn popping sound. And with that cracking, basically is saying that, you know, the beans are getting close to their roast. You can see in the drum here, still pretty light, the color, but this is all going to change very rapidly, getting close to 400 degrees. So on top of the roaster, you need the fan, like I said, and the colanders for cooling. You can get beans at a bunch of places. You can get the same bean. I get samplers, you know, like I said, because of the cost, it's a little bit cheaper. It's not much. You can get 10 pounds of, you know, a certain specific type of bean if you like. All right, I'm gonna get my gloves on because we're getting really close here. We're at 421. I can hear the sound of the popping, cracking going on. It says we're at 430, so I'm gonna shut this off. I don't know that 430 is right. The roast still looks, I mean, it looks a good medium, but it looks a little light. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it off though. And that's the difference in some of these roasts from some of these beans that you get from different locations. You know, the roast is a little different. I'm gonna go from this glove and I'm gonna put these gloves on over here because so you probably hear the cracking sound a little bit better. And pull this out of here. All right, so I don't know if you can see all that chafe coming out, but that's basically the dried skin coming off of the bean. This is the messy part. This is why you probably don't want to do this inside. Aside from the smoke from the roast, this chafe is a lot. So I'm just doing it all in one colander real quick just to kind of get it cooled down a little bit and stop roasting. And then I want to separate this so I can do this chafing a little bit better. And so you see I'm just shaking the beans around so the chafe can come to the top and get blown off by the fan. And that's basically what's happening here. It's a lot for this colander. Yeah, I got to get a new temperature gauge. This is a medium to light roast here. I'm going to show you in just a second. So I don't know, we've been with about 20 minutes. So like I said, you know, about 15 to 17 minutes it takes to do a roast. And then this process here is just going to take a few minutes. And since I have two different baskets here, you know, I got to do each separately, so it takes a minute. And we're really just cooling it and getting rid of all the skin of the bean that came off in the roasting process, dried out. You know, the beans expanded, they get bigger, larger when you do the roasting. I think this camera's going to have a little bit better light on it. So yeah, it's a little tough to see there. Maybe that gives you a little good view of it, but it's a pretty good little medium roast. Sorry, the sun is really low in the sky right now, so it's hard to get it so it's not shadowed. And then if I do this one over here, I think it's going to be a little darker. This is shadowing. So that's the process, you know. It's a great hobby, and you can really work on different flavors. And because I do 2 batches of 2 different flavors, you know, you're basically doing a blended roast. So you're going to get some different flavors. So because I do 2 different types every week, I get different coffee flavors every time I roast. And that's why sometimes when I roast, you see on this bag here, it discovers the profile of the bean and kind of the flavors you're going to kind of get from it. And it also will talk about the temperatures or the roast, like see it says city roast on this one. And you know, the darker you roast it, you're going to get maybe more of a chocolate flavor, you know, and every you know, bean is different. Every region is different where the beans come from. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll look at these bags of the different flavors, profiles that they have on them, and I'll try to mix 2 together, like 2 fruities together, or 2 chocolaties, or you know, the nutty ones, all those, you know, different flavors together in the same blended roast. And it definitely works. You'll get maybe more of a chocolate hint or flavor, or a nutty flavor. And if you do the fruity ones, you know, a more fruity flavor in your end roast. Roasting at a medium is probably where your most flavor is going to come from. You know, and like I said, I'm no expert, so I only go by my experience of doing this over and over. And it seems like every time I roast, it's a new experiment, a new experience and experiment. So I'm just going to, you know, do a shake here. Get this shake out of here. Looks pretty good. Let's see where this one's at. It still seems to have a lot in it. Now that it's cool, it's a little easier to shake it around with my hands and get that chafe to come out of the bottom. Okay, so I definitely feel like this was not a 435 degree temperature roast here. So I want to get me a new thermometer for next one. Let's see if that, and like I said, sometimes, you know, the bean, the area it comes from, you know, they roast differently. Some roast faster than others, some are drier than others. And, you know, the coloring, some of them take a little longer to come out. So it's not uncommon for you to get 2 different darknesses out of 2 different beans at the same temperature. And that's also why sometimes you'll see that when you do roast 2 together, you'll see one has a little different color than the other. These seem pretty even here. And that's the other thing I like about this roaster, is you do get a really even roast with this. The basket roaster I used to use, it only did a pound. I definitely did not get an even roast from it. But I finally melted that thing. I've had some problems. I've had some things go wrong in my roast. I've had my beans catch on fire because I wasn't paying attention. You know, sometimes in the winter it's so cold when I roast outside, because I used to do it in the morning at like 8 o'clock in the morning, one of the first things I would do. Now, because I do these lives, I do it a little later in the afternoon. And I would get you know, carried away doing something in the yard while the thing's roasting, and I can kind of hear it, and then I can kind of see it smoking. But yeah, a couple times I let it go too long, and I got over there and the beans were on fire. And I lost the batch. Haven't done that in a long time, but so that's the roast. Hope you can see that pretty good there. That's a really nice color. It's really good, light to medium roast. See if we can't get a bit of a view over here. Okay. I appreciate the people who comment on my videos or ask questions. You know, like I said, I'm not a professional, so I can guide you as best I can. I'm a hobbyist. I do this as a hobby. I enjoy doing it. I've been doing it for about 3 years. The process from here is I'm going to let it sit for a day, 24 hours. I'm going to let it sit and decarb is the term. Basically let it breathe, let it release any more of its gases, CO2, that sort of thing, before I go ahead and start grinding it up and using it and drinking it. So we generally, you know, about 3 days before we actually start using. I mean, every now and then we use it the very next day, but you know, for the most part, it's about 3 days in between, because we use what we have already roasted until that's done. We've been having some coffee pot issues. I mentioned this before, that we have a coffee pot that grinds the beans before it brews. And we've been having problems with that coffee pot, so we had to buy a backup coffee pot because it wasn't doing it. And my other backup before was doing a pour over type coffee. I have a couple of different ways, or an espresso Americano type coffee. We have 2 coffee pots going right now, and now we're trying to figure out what to do, because this is our second grind and brew coffee pot. It's the same brand, because there's not very many different types of them. And the first one lasted a little over a year, and this one here, same thing, a little over a year, and it died on us. So trying to figure that issue out. Anyways, hope you got some info out of this. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great one. Thanks for watching.